Welcome to Building Legendary Leaders, the podcast where leaders leave behind chaos and step into clarity. This is where real stories come alive with the struggles, breakthroughs, and lessons that shape the most effective executives today. Every episode delivers fresh insights you can apply to your own leadership journey. If you are ready to stop putting out fires and start leading with purpose, this is the place for you. Here is your host, Jim Saliba.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Building Legendary Leaders. You know, usually I'm the one that's hosting and asking the questions, but today we're going to do it a little bit different. Since this is the first one, my producer, Nick, is going to put me on the hot seat and I get to answer the questions. You ready, Nick?
Sure, I'm always ready. You know, they say I was born ready, so always ready for action. And with the kind of introduction you made, I'm so impressed. So let's jump right into it. So first of all, since this is the very first episode, my job today is to introduce your podcast to your audience and potential guests that will be joining you on this podcast. So tell us, what is your podcast called and what it's about?
Well, as I said, it's called Building Legendary Leaders. And it's all about leadership. And I know that's a broad topic. And we know that because there are thousands of books and blogs and so on written on the topic. But I'm all about the messiness that it takes the leaders to grow through the ranks. You know what? We tend to promote people based on their technical skill, and they get stuck because they don't have the leadership skills. It's amazing that I found a statistic that says it takes 10 years in general for leaders to get training to be leaders, but they've been doing it for 10 years. What have they been doing? So this is what this podcast is all about, the tips, the tricks, the messiness to help people grow as a leader.
You're right. Leadership is a very broad term. And the other thing here is that may not really become obvious right away is there is different levels of leadership. In other words, leadership at different levels of your career path. For example, someone who is the first time leader. In other words, they've done such a great job and now they've been promoted to be in charge of a small team. Well, that's leadership. Now, the same person continues on, becomes a manager of, let's say, a bigger team. That's different. And then directorship, then vice president, then so on and so forth. So you get the idea. So what I want to know from you is what specific type of stage that you are looking to deliver the most value to through this podcast?
Well, the audience that I have been talking to for years in my blogs tend to be directors, VPs, and C-suite, often that middle management to upper level is where my sweet spot has always been in my blogs, in my coaching, and all the activities I do. But it's interesting that you talk about these levels because it has nothing to do with title. In my new book, I wrote that's coming out actually the end of this month, Leading Like a CEO. I talk about the concept of a leadership impact ladder. Nothing to do with the title, but the impact you're making. And although there's 6 rungs, I talk about 3 major levels. There's the doer. I get things done. You have on your reviews that I can give Nick anything and I know it gets done. But you can only scale so much at that level doing things yourself. The next one is the manager, where I'm getting things done through others. But I tend still to put on my superhero cape when things get busy and I take over and I'm the fixer and I still get things done. The next level is really the architect. and you are at the level where you're not really doing those things, but you're building the systems and the environment for your people to do great work. And that's where we want you to be as a leader.
When you describe it like that, it becomes so clear. And it's true. And each one of those has its own challenges. So give us a sense of, it's kind of obvious, but I want you to spell it out for those who are going to be hearing. Who is going to benefit from tuning in to watch your episodes and tune into the conversations?
Well, I would say all those levels are going to benefit from it. The emerging leaders that are trying things out for the first time, and I like the word trying things out because it's all about experimenting. That's another big topic that I always talk about, because as humans, as adults, we learn by doing. We're experiential. It's not like when we were in elementary school and we could sit there and we just absorb information. We learn by doing things and trying things out. And I have people that I coach, COOs of multi-billion-dollar companies that still have the same human issues like imposter syndrome, trying things out, telling people too quick to fix their problems because we want speed and we're not allowing people to figure it out on their own. They're at all levels, these problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when they tune in, can you share with us benefits of following and then tuning into each episode and sitting through it all? Some of the things that they can take away and then apply in their own operation to see the benefits of.
You did ask that question, and I didn't quite get to it, did I? But the benefit is this. We're going to talk about the experiments and people tried at different levels and what worked for them and what didn't work for them so that you can try it out yourself, because it's all about trying and seeing how things work.
Some examples, for example, so to get a much, much better understanding of what can be actionable, so to speak.
Oh, well, I have one person that you'll see on my podcast. She built a telehealth multi-million dollars per month business from scratch. And she had problems in building that team from the first 3 people she had hired to now supporting 60 different areas in healthcare and all the trouble she had along the way. And one example is the founding members of the team, how they change when all of a sudden the team gets big and they no longer can get the amount of time they used to get from their boss, and what starts to happen with that.
Yeah, team building is you hire the right person, everything works out. You hire the wrong person, everything falls apart.
Yeah, but I know I'm interrupting, but it's more than that, because you're hiring for what you need right now. And now the team grows to something else. Maybe those people are going to make them move and change with the culture, but sometimes they don't. There's someone else that I interviewed that their company was acquired by somebody else. And some of the people that were in his team were like, great, that's why I came here, a small company, we're going to grow. And other people will say, that's not why I came here. I came because it's small and family-like, and it's not going to be like that anymore. What do? You have 2 extremes, and you're going to hear about what that person did.
Well, that's great. It is the foundation of building a good company. It's not about revenues. Revenues, I always say, revenues are the byproducts of what you are able to do as an organization. So I can see that happening here. So obviously, you're going to be having a lot of conversations with different people. Share with us the kind of guests that you intend to have on the show.
Well, I have people lined up already, from managers to directors. I have a PhD. I have a person from HR that talks about things from a different view of the manager and how they help. So I have all kinds of different people at different levels handling the same problems that my listeners run into every single day.
So different levels of the leadership in the corporate structure will be joining you. Do you have any focus on industry?
You know, not really. I tend to do a lot in the world of tech because that's where I grew up. But I realized in my more later years, I'm doing a lot of coaching and work in healthcare at all different types of things in healthcare. I didn't realize how complicated and big the whole healthcare system is. The other thing is I get a lot of finance as well.
Okay. So tech, healthcare, finance is something that you personally have spent a lot of time on. However, it's not exclusive to those categories.
No, not at all. We're all human and we run into the same problems no matter what industry it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, and since I'm in tech, I'm especially interested in these conversations are always delicious for those who are in responsibility positions. So now that we covered who your guests are and the benefits and your audience and everything else. So when they all tune in or join you on stage, give us a sense of the kind of topics.
Well, I think we talked about that a little bit, like team building for this one person who built the telehealth industry from nothing. And now she is becoming partner and what's issues are coming with that. I have someone who has been in a hardware industry creating chips here in Silicon Valley and the types of problems he has with merging together the concept of a quality product management, the technology that's needed in all the manufacturing, and then understanding the business and making money at the same time. He has to balance all those things together as a GM. And we're going to be talking about some of those topics.
Do you intend to get into some practical conversations about, for example, customer acquisition? What's working for people today?
Yes. Well, I have to listen to my audience and see what they're most interested in. Most of the time, people are interested in what can I take today that I heard from you that I can take to work Monday morning and start trying it out. What's that experiment? So it's in team building. What's the right team? Sometimes we built a team for what we needed last year, not what we need this year. And how do I start migrating that? I have someone that I'm interviewing that's on my queue. She is working for a huge, giant tech company, and she is a front runner. She believes in building strategy, new topics, new technologies. But what happens when what she's working on now becomes mainstream? How she's having a hard time letting go to be able to move on to the next thing. You want to hear about that?
Those challenges are extremely significant and it happens in the life of pretty much when you get into these larger scale operations, they hit you in the face. The other interesting one that I'm always curious about is those turnaround situations, like people coming because it's usually things are going wrong, and either in your own operation or you are brought in turnaround. It's usually people are not feeling good, some jumping ship, wrong strategy, or pretty much things have run their course now and nothing much has been done. And and so short in cash. So, do you intend to cover those kinds of situations?
Well, those are the situations I love the most. You know, in my career, I was the change agent in how to do large transformations in big companies. And those are the ones that I love the most because they're so complex and there's so much going on. And there's people are going to love the change and there's people who are going to hate the change. So turnaround is its own breed of how to make that happen. And I talk to a lot of people, a lot of clients about doing that. One of my favorite resources for that is the first 90 days. And we talk about those type of things. It's not just us, our conversations. There's tons of resources out there that we can use and bring in.
Yeah, yeah. Great, great. So this is really for anybody who's either building a company or running a company in a leadership position. These are always interesting. So you and I can share stories and keep going for a long time, but we all have work to do. So what I want to do now is get to know you a little bit in terms of who Jim Saliba is. And what I'm usually interested in this experiment, so to speak, is not your resume, your beginnings, because we are all human beings. And as they say, however you are at the age of 7, that's how you're going to be at the age of 70. So, what defines us, it kind of gets put in place during our early years. So, I want to know, tell us where you grew up and tell us if you can remember the very first thing as a kid that you did that resembles what you do today.
Uh, well, I grew up Northeast Long Island in New York. Um, Winters used to be big and lots of snow. I remember that growing up. Not so much anymore. I think I'm happy about that. I don't like shoveling. And I don't know something as a kid, but what came up in my mind when you asked that question is a few years ago, my wife and I went back around Christmas time and we had a big dinner with a bunch of friends from college, about 15, 20 of us. And one person said, Jim, I remember you as being the risk taker. And I'm thinking myself, gee, I don't think I would have said that about myself at the time, but that is really my life. I love new things. I love trying out new things. I'm kind of the maverick. Once we have something working, well, what's the next best way to do it? And taking a risk, starting my own business, taking a risk, helping companies change and do big transformations. We never know how it's going to come out. My crystal ball is just as cracked and foggy as the next person. But you need to take the risk because the best things in life are on the other side.
Yes, I totally agree. So go back to what you said. I love trying new things. So is that the case ever since you were a kid? You were always looking for the new thing?
Yes, I like to try things. I like to make things better. I'm a woodworker. I love to do things with wood and it's not just making the final product. It's the whole process and putting it together, designing it, making the cuts, making it fit together, finding that, oh, well, I have a knot in the wrong place. What am I going to do? How am I going to change it? So there's a lot of creativity in it, which I love and enjoy.
Is that something that kind of runs in the family, or was it just you?
I'm the one that does it the most. My dad was a woodworker. I kind of got it from him. Um, but I would say my two brothers are more risk adverse than I am. I'm willing to go out and try things, and they're more comfortable with staying with tried and true.
And so you mentioned your dad was a woodworker. With your two brothers, is it three of you?
Actually, there's four of us. My youngest one is my youngest sibling is my sister.
Mm. And so where are you in that?
I am number two.
Number two. Okay, so you were kind of the most senior after your older brother.
Yes.
And what was it like in terms of your relationship with your dad compared to your brothers?
Well, I would say my brothers, just like boys, we had all our fights and stuff like that. I guess I'm closer in age with my older brother, so I'm closer to him. But we've always had this thing that we'll fight with each other, but nobody else has that right. So in school, you couldn't pick on my brother. My brother didn't think you could pick on me. But man, pick on each other.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's family sticks together in the end to the outside. But as far as your dad, and what I'm trying to figure out is your dad being a woodworker. Just it being, woodworkers. I happen to know a little bit about woodworkers, believe it or not, because one of my clients is a manufacturer of masks, and their initial target market was woodworkers. So when I was working with them, I got to find out that woodworking community, there's like several different segments. It's all different things, people doing different things. So creative people and resilient people. So that creativity from your father clearly rubbed off on you a little bit, right? Would you say?
Yes.
And compared to your brothers, in terms of being your closeness to your father, where would you say you were?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I never thought about it being any different. I would say we were all the same. My dad had a boat when we were growing up, and we would go out fishing together. And I know that when we were young on Saturdays, the guys would go out fishing. And then on Sunday, the whole family would go. My mom and my sister would come, and we would go to this island in the Great South Bay and beach the boat and go swimming and picnicking and stuff like that. But I remember the three of us boys going out with my dad fishing on Saturdays.
Mm. Well, it's a nice memory. So there was really not much of a difference between, who was closer. It was the same.
Yeah, I don't think there was any tension or rivalry there.
And what did your mother do in terms of work?
My mom stayed home while we were growing up, and she started doing some stuff on the side. She was doing reupholstery of stuff when I was in high school.
And your father, outside of the woodworking, hobby, was he an entrepreneur?
Oh, no, he worked for a big company. He worked for Otis Elevator. Started out small and ended up being assistant to the treasurer when he retired. So he was really an accountant by trade.
So I'm trying to understand where this creative approach to trying new things and also taking risks. Where is all that coming from? There must be something that influenced you to nurture that approach.
Well, the experimenting is really coming more from what I would call my scientific side of my brain. I observe a lot, And I observed that as adults, we learn by trying things out, right? The whole idea of an apprentice gone back in years is learning and trying things out and doing them. But I realized experimenting has more constraints around trying things. You have the question you're trying to answer, a hypothesis. If I do X, I should get Y. Well, now what is the smallest, cheapest, fastest thing I can do to prove or disprove that? Because often in leaders, they say, we tried something, and I'll say, how did it work? Oh, I don't know. We did so many things at the same time, or we never went back to it. Experiment has a time frame, a hypothesis, and I believe in doing them in very short loops, which is getting to what we call fail fast, right? Or learn fast, so that's where experiments come from. But the risk taking, I don't know, maybe that's more mixed in the genes. The problem with it for me is, as a leader, I can get into the whole shiny objects thing. What's the next shiny object? And get distracted. So when I build a team, I always need someone to be that opposite for me, to ground me in for the daily details in a way. And it can't just be anybody to do that, because if they're constantly telling me, no, Jim, you can't, I'm going to get pissed off and get somebody else. Right. So I need someone who's going to ground me, but be able to talk to me at the same time without pissing me off.
Do you have somebody like that?
Through the years, I've had a number of people like that. One especially, when I worked for a company called Computer Associates, I had a woman named Roya, who anytime I was going to build a team, I wanted her on my team.
That's great. So I still don't really hear the answer, Jim, in terms of who influenced you to pursue this, being creative. And I tell you this, this actually happened to me a couple of days ago. So I'm talking to someone very close to me. She has a son. And we were talking on WhatsApp, on with video. And the son wanted the mother and came over. And she was obviously busy. And then he saw her talking to me. As soon as saw me on the video, hid behind pillows. And I said, oh, he's shy. And she said, don't call him shy. Because people call him shy and we don't want him to be shy. So I didn't say anything. And after the following day, we're talking. I said, look, you know who was shy? I was, and I am. And you know what being shy did for me? I became more strategic. Before talking to anybody, I became more prepared. And if I opened my mouth, I was already knowledgeable about the person or whatever. So it made me a lot. It makes me look much smarter than I in fact am when I start talking. So I said, your weakness becomes your strength if you embrace it. So I said, why do you want him growing up thinking I have a bad thing, I'm shy? So in fact, I would say to him, oh, what a great talent you have. You're shy. Shy people are smart people and blah, blah. That's what you should encourage him and let him embrace. So I never had that perspective. So my question to you is, what influenced you and who influenced you, more important, to take this path?
I don't know. I always had this curiosity that led me to try different things. But it's interesting you talked about the shyness, because that's who I thought I was back in college days, in high school. But this one person saw in me the deeper beyond the surface that I was taking risk and trying things out. One other person that influenced me, and maybe in a different way than you're thinking, at one point in time, I was at a company. There was a lot of movement. We had a new general manager come in, and I was kind of concerned because he already let go some of my peers. And I'm sitting waiting for my first meeting with him. And it went completely different than I thought. And he said to me, I need your help. I was considered the process person. And he said, I need your help. I have one team who really can't deliver a product. I don't care how much time I give them. I want you to go look at what they're doing, figure out their process, burn it down to the nap, and build them up all over again. And I'm like, okay, now, okay, I'm the process guy, but I always did little tweaks. I never did something like this. So then I asked him a question, something my old boss would have wanted me to ask. And he said to me, Rob, I don't know. That's what the frig I have you for. So all of a sudden I realized he's not waiting for me to ask. He's waiting for me to do.
Yeah. I mean, look, these are important things we don't realize. Why were you always curious?
I like to learn. I did this values thing years ago to figure out what my values are. And you had a whole bunch of cards, and there were 32 of them. And they said, okay, get it down to 6. You have 3 minutes. Get it down to 6. Okay, you have 2 minutes. Get it down to 3. Okay, you have 30 seconds. What's the top one? Mine ended up being lifetime of learning.
And this was always the case from the childhood.
It was always the case. I love to learn.
And why is it that you always wanted to learn?
I don't know. At one point, it was maybe a fear that somebody's going to ask me something and I don't know, or I'm going to be asked to do something and I don't know what to do. And that grew into every time I was asked to do something at work, one of the first things I would do is, well, I've never done this before. Amazon, 6 books show up. I start reading, I start researching, I start trying things out, seeing what's working for me, what's not working for me. And that became a pattern of success for me.
And that fear that you had, where do you think that fear kind of come about? Were you caught off guard when you were a kid?
Fear is an amazing thing. It's one of the biggest drivers of humans. And for leaders, I talk about the 4 fears of leadership. And one of them I call is the fear of incompetence, which we commonly call the imposter syndrome. And I know I suffer from it every now and then. But the thing is this, statistics show, and many surveys of leaders say that they're always working through at least 2 of these fears at any point in time. So everybody has them. That little voice in our head that says, no, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this. That's a fear. But if we get beyond them, if we figure out ways to get beyond them, how to work with them, right? Take those risks, as I said, because when we take those risks, life is on the other side.
And your fear that as a kid, where do you think that came from?
I don't know. Maybe it's the first time I didn't bring home a report card that my parents wanted to see.
Oh, so that happened?
Oh, yeah. At least once.
And what happened when that happened? What do you remember?
Well, I got, why aren't you doing this? You should be doing your homework and all that type of stuff. But I realized at that time I was not really a big reader. I was learning through sitting in class and memorizing, just absorbing. And after a while, that doesn't work anymore, right? You have to do the reading, you have to do the work. And once I realized that, and I started being a reader, the world opened up. When I wrote my first book and I published it, it gave me a totally new feeling every time I walk into a bookstore. Because what is in the bookstore is people like myself who are expressing their own ideas.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. What I'm hearing is that was a negative, obviously, as a kid, bringing home, no report card and then being reprimanded. But that turned you into what you developed, that fear, and then that turned you into a learner, a lifetime learner. So that was a good thing.
Yes. Connecting that together now, yes, I would say it is a good thing. But of course, we are a sum of all our experiences as humans, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's really what I was trying to understand better. And because at the end of the day, like I share with you my own situation. My mother was, but both my parents were doctors. There was no business person in the family. And my mother was a little bit of a, even though she was a doctor, her parenting skills were a little bit strange. Like, for example, she said, "You're not going out to play with anybody. You're going to stay home, but I'll get you any toy you want." So, one of those things that they say doesn't play well with others. It's not that I didn't get to play, so I have no idea. So one day, when I was a kid, the Lego had just come out. But because it was new, it was expensive. So she instead bought me this Lego type of toy in a box, except that instead of those plastic pieces, this thing came with nuts and bolts and those metal bases and things like that. And it had the plan, so you had to build stuff, but you had to use those little spanners, the little keys, and the little bolts and the nuts. My fingers would bleed using this. Well, guess what? That turned me into an engineer. And I started to take things apart, putting them back together. And I was a good student. Everybody wanted me to be the next doctor in the family. In fact, they even once, my father is going to do an operation, and those 8mm cameras had just come out. So they even got me into the OR to help with filming it because they assumed that I was going to be the next doctor in the family, and I had no interest. so, so I ended up becoming an engineer. So that's why I want to learn all about what made you who you are. So it's very interesting. Great conversation, Jim. So tell us the name of your podcast again and where people can tune in, and also share your contact information, how people can reach you.
So the name of the podcast is Building Legendary Leaders. You'll be able to see it on Apple and any other place where you get your podcasts. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn at James Saliba, and you can find my website at jamessaliba.com.
Thank you. And this is great to learn about you. I'm sure you'll hear from a lot of people and people will tune in. You're doing great service to all those who are in those leadership roles. And thank you for the opportunity to learn more about you.
Thank you very much. It's not easy being in the hot seat. I have to give my guests credit.
Yes, definitely. And especially with you, I'm sure. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Building Legendary Leaders podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.